Okay, here we go. I'll pin myself. No, maybe I'll just, is that how it works? Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to our final Higher Degrees Research Colloquium. My name is Mashid Ansari, and it's a pleasure to be your host for this afternoon. We have two wonderful presentations from our PhD candidates this afternoon. The first presentation, we've just slightly changed the order. So the first presentation is by our PhD candidate, Mustafa Al-Ghashangi, and he is a PhD candidate at the Center of Islamic Studies and Civilization. He has been working on a research, and this afternoon he will be presenting the research proposal for his confirmation of candidature. And I would like to acknowledge Professor Dr. Hussein Rasool, who has joined us. He's one of the reviewers. Dr. Suleiman, who is his principal supervisor, and is it Dr. Any others? Dr. Salih? Yeah, Professor Salih, who's his other supervisor. So we've just done a bit of a swap, and we're going to hear from Mustafa. Then later we're going to hear from Carol. And Carol is also a PhD candidate. She's towards the end of her journey of the PhD. It's a final thesis presentation. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Both of the topics are focused on around, and Professor Bagas is joining us. Both of the topics are actually focused on Islamic psychology somehow. And I'm just going to introduce Mustafa's topic first. So Mustafa is going to be talking about a critical analysis of obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, familiar to all of us, but he's looking at it from the classical Islamic texts, and he's going to compare that with contemporary fatwa, exploring its conceptualization, identification, treatment, and modern difficulties. Mustafa has a lengthy, wonderful abstract that I have shared in the emails with you, and he'll, I'm sure, take us through his presentation. So without further ado, I would just unpin myself, remove it, and Mustafa will be presenting to us. So please make him feel welcome virtually, if you may. Spotlight for everyone. Okay, there we go. So over to you, Mustafa. Hopefully you can share your screen now.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for giving me time out of your day and for privileging me with this opportunity to present this topic to you today. I am trying to share my screen, but for some reason, we're struggling. We will get it, inshallah, bi'idhnillah. As I am doing that, I'd probably kind of steal this opportunity very quickly just to send my prayers to the plight of the Palestinian people overseas. I believe that scholarship is not something that needs to remain theoretical and removed from people's realities. And so I do this with a heavy heart, sitting in the safety of my own home, but fully acknowledge the difficulty of our brothers and sisters overseas and wherever they may be around the world. Bismillah, I think the screen is okay.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody can see that okay? Alhamdulillah, excellent. Okay, I'll get right to it, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barik ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع. We're going into this topic. So Dr. Mashid has very kind of graciously introduced me and introduced the topic. So there's no reason for me to read out the title again. Inshallah, today's presentation, this is kind of like a table, contents of the seminar. So we'll talk a overview of the project, inshallah. Then we'll go into the introduction, the literature review of those 5 broad topics, which will then lead us into the research questions, the theoretical frameworks, which are going to talk about the feasibility of this study and the relevance of this study, its methodology, its time frame, and then finally ending with references. So this project seeks to discuss these 6 broad viewpoints. So we're looking at philosophy, Islamic law, sociology, contemporary law and fatwa, modern psychology, and classical Islamic medicine. Getting right into it, so talking about OCD. So OCD, as defined today, is a mental illness characterized by 3 main features. The first one is the intrusive thoughts, and those are unwanted, recurrent, distressing thoughts, images, or impulses. The ritualistic behaviors, and those are defined as behaviors that one engages in to stop the distress of the intrusive thoughts. And thirdly, that these behaviors interfere with daily functioning across multiple contexts. The global prevalence today of OCD is estimated to be about 1.1 to 1.8%, with females affected slightly higher than males. Sadly, though, our reference works, when we talk about the history of OCD, kind of ignore the rich traditions that have come before, I guess, Western academia. So the Stanford Faculty of Medicine should have done a lot better, sadly, didn't. Talks about OCD being first identified and described as dating back to the 14th and 15th century as something known as religious scrupulosity. And it wasn't until 1691 with the Bishop of Norwich, John Moore, and I've got his book, it's Letters to the Queen. He described it as a disorder of the mind in which worshippers are tormented by naughty and sometimes blasphemous thoughts. How do I get rid of this? Physicians following that came to call it by many other names, such as neurosis, monomania, folie de Troyes, Grubenschultz, and it wasn't until Freud in 1895 who called it obsessive neurosis. However, as we know from our rich history and from our esteemed markers today, Dr. Bagus Fiona and Professor Rasool, of course, OCD wasn't first identified by the church or physicians post-Freud. It was very much a part of Muslim physicians in classical Islamic medicine, as well as classical Islamic law. So much so that it has its own unique categorization in Islamic law known as fiqh al-muwaswas, or the jurisprudence of the one who has obsessive doubts. And the sufferers of this are known as al-muwaswas, the one that's plagued with doubts. The early works of Sunni scholarship, or Sunni fiqh, Sunni schools, are replete with discussions about waswas al-qahri, or the overwhelming whispers that someone gets. So much so that in legal methodology, it actually has its own maxim, and that is al-yaqinu la yazulu bishak, and that is certainty is not removed by doubt. And we'll talk more about some of these legal maxims as they will make part of the theoretical framework, inshallah. Scholars as early as Imam Malik and Imam Shafi'i discussed legal maxims, and it features in their works and works that then followed. However, from a medico-psychological viewpoint, of course, for our esteemed guests here, most of you would now know of Abu Zaid al-Balkhi, who was promoted by the late Professor Malik Badri, and he promoted him as the father of psychology and cognitive therapy. And the sad and the most heartbreaking part of this is that he does not feature in a single work of modern psychology. Um, Understanding mental illness specifically in Islamic law is a topic that needs specification and accuracy because there are real world consequences in mislabeling it. Insanity has real world consequences for people that are suffering and has real legal consequences for people that are described as such. The key texts that kind of discuss insanity or mental illness is the hadith, of course, from the Prophet ﷺ. He said, the pen has been lifted from three, from the sleeper until he wakes, from the minor until he grows, and from the insane until he comes back to his senses. And there are many variations of this hadith that I've discussed in the research proposal. And of course, the ayat in the Quran, so the one that I've shared is from Surah Al-Fath, it says that there is no blame for the blind, nor for the lame, nor is there blame for the sick, meaning that they are not held to account. They are exempt. So in order to correctly explore this question, specification is needed about the status of people with mental illness. Are they considered to be in a state of junoon, insanity, or are they considered to be in a state of marad, illness? So this is kind of like a brief overview of the topics explored. So philosophical conceptualizations of the human being, because we're going to be exploring the aql, what it means to have intellect, what it means to possess a mind. We'll be discussing classical Islamic law and its designation of insanity and the dispensations that are usually afforded to people that are unwell. We will look at the sociological and historical conceptualizations of the meanings of insanity and of illness and how the world responded to that, specifically classical Islam, a classical Islamic period, and post-Enlightenment Europe. We'll be talking about contemporary common law, things like the insanity plea and mens rea, which is the guilty intent, classical Islamic medicine and how they kind of viewed illnesses and insanity, and modern psychological views, approaches to mental illnesses and their classifications. Going into the literature review, of course, Yani, I don't aim to provide a comprehensive one here. What I aim to do is just to give you a few kind of key, perhaps snapshots, highlight a few texts and tell you where the gap is in this body of literature. So the first body of literature on mental illness and in classical Islamic medicine. So insanity, or what is now recognized as mental illnesses, was not seen as a deficiency in the mind. It had nothing to do necessarily with the aql, but it was a result of the imbalance of fluids in the body known as akhlat or humors, and that comes from humoral medicine. And this stunning quote by Ibn Sina, when he was asked about kind of where does it come from, he said, "We don't pay attention to it because we are doctors. If it were caused by the jinn or not is a remote question. If it was caused by the jinn, it happens by changing the temperament to black bile. For melancolia's cause is the dominance of black bile." And melancholia was largely known as kind of depression back then, or mental illness, or kind of loosely insanity. For Abu Zayd al-Balqi, psychological illnesses were the same as physical illnesses. They didn't differentiate between the two in that they both possess internal and external causes, and they can cause one another. The prevailing question, however, is it a something within the mind, within the aql, or from the mind? And there's the greater philosophical question that I was talking about. And Ibn Sina departs from Aristotle here in that they're talking about where is the nafs? Is it in the brain or is it in the heart? Ibn Sina kind of said it's both. So the nafsaniya qualities are considered to be in the brain, while the hayawaniya qualities, the animalistic faculties, are in the heart. Things like hunger and desire and anger and all of that sort of stuff. So it appears from this body of literature that junoon, or insanity for Muslim physicians, has little to do with deficiencies in the aql as understood generally by lawyers or Muslim jurists or even common law these days, but it's by disordered behavior. And that is owing to an imbalance in the body's humors and its effect on the aql. The gap in this body of literature is that no Muslim physician goes into the fiqh of these illnesses, which is really unusual because generally they're polymaths, which means they kind of specialize in both fields. And Abu Zayd al-Balkhi was one of them. He was a Maliki scholar, but he doesn't really talk about the fiqh of this. And so that there's something that we're hoping to address, inshallah, in this body of work that we're doing this research. Classical Islamic law with regards to al-Muwaswas within the Shafi'i madhab, so Ibn Hajar and al-Khatib al-Shirbini, they're known as the relied upon positions within the school, refer to the person as overcome by his aql, and no regard is given to them. So no regard is given to them with respect to the legal consequences of their thinking. However, both texts do not explore why this is the case. So it's not clear whether they believe that the person that had wiswas or al-muwaswas was majnoon, because they refer to the majnoon in a similar sort of way, and that no regard is given to the legal consequences of their thinking, or that they're given specific dispensations as a result of their illness. Within the Hanafi school, Ibn Abidin, a later scholar of the madhab, opines that divorcing a person with wiswas is not permissible. And Ibn Abidin also describes the wiswas as someone that is overcome. Their thoughts overcome the aql, and says whatever crosses his conscience, which is again a very similar way to how they define the majnoon. The Maliki madhab is a little bit more well defined when it comes to this, and there's some stunning literature, and I've shared some of it here. The Malikis, so Ibn Arafah, again, relied upon position of that madhab, says it's not permissible to appoint a disbeliever or a person with obsessive thoughts as a judge by consensus. And it's the same for a person that is insane. They can't be designated a judge. Uh, so this indicates that the Malikis considered the Muwaswas to be in categories similar to other people. Um, and it shows that they referred to them as their own category as well as people that suffer from obsessions. Perhaps the most compelling example is from Imam al-Qarafi, who says, I won't read the entire quote, but the meaning of it is that for the lay person, if you had your wudu and you were certain that you lost it, you repeat your wudu. But for the person that is afflicted with wiswas, that's not true. They just assume that they've got their wudu. The main impression, though, and this is the gap that exists, is that this body of literature, the fiqh, is disconnected from the view of early Muslim physicians. And none of them reference the work of early Muslim physicians. You don't see Imam Shafi'i, for instance, talking about early Muslim physicians, or you won't even see the later scholars like Imam al-Nawawi won't reference Ibn Sina, for instance. And that's the disconnection between law and medicine, and it still exists today. Sociological literature on insanity and mental illness. So there's two key works here that will kind of explore the sociology and historiography of mental illness and insanity. So Michel Foucault's work, Madness and Civilization, and Andrew Scoll's work, Madness in Civilization, both talk about these as being social constructs. Um, and that's a really kind of key theoretical framework that I'll be using as well. They talk of the tragedy that I guess the age of reason or the age of enlightenment, this obsession, and yani, I picked the word on purpose, that post Enlightenment Europe had with rationality and reason, and the consequences of that was that 1% of Paris's population was thrown in mental asylums. Three works by Michael Doles will be examined, and he's done some excellent work on understanding the Majnun in classical Islamic societies. He concludes one of his chapters in his work, The Majnun, the Madman in Medieval Islamic Society, really brilliantly. He said the Muslim jurist did not probe into the questions of causation, whether insanity was caused by the imbalance of humors or demons or God. Yet unreason of the madman goes to the very heart of Muslim life. For niyyah, intention or purpose, is a fundamental aspect of all legal actions and most ritual observations. Literature on common law, psychology and modern fatwa. So there's three kind of legal mechanisms that I'm discussing here. So the McNaughton rule, which determines criminal insanity if someone was suffering from a disease of the mind that affects their reason, such that they didn't know what they were doing. And in Australia, that rule has been encompassed to people that are unable to control their conduct. So that kind of widens the net to people that are suffering from impulse control problems. The Durham rule is less used today, but the rule is that a person is not criminally responsible if the unlawful act was a product of mental disease or defects. The most controversial of these, though, is Norway's penal code, which adopts a exclusively medical model on insanity, saying that a person must be psychotic at the time of the offense, and that's why Andreas Breivik was found guilty. Sorry, was determined to be criminally insane because they said that he was psychotic at the time, even though his cognitive and his intellectual faculties were intact. Um, and that's a huge disconnect from modern psychology, and I'll discuss that in a minute. Um, Modern psychology doesn't share this same framework. It's not the disease of the mind. It's not the loss of reason. You won't open up manuals of mental illness in modern psychology and see insanity written there. Insanity is not a mental illness. It's not a way that we understand a person's behavior. The way that we understand, or the way that modern psychology kind of understands mental illness, is that it is a dysfunction in psychological, biological, or developmental processes underlying mental functioning, and they're usually associated with significant distress or disability in social, occupational, or other important activities. So it means that a person can be unwell, mentally ill, even though their intellectual faculties or their cognitive faculties are intact. Uh, Modern fatwa. There are huge gaps in the understandings of modern fatwa in the way that they approach modern psychological theories and even classical Islam. Uh, did an extensive search through some of these national boards, and you won't find much written on the fiqh of al-muwaswas, the jurisprudence of the person that has obsessive whispers. You will find some random kind of answers here about mental illness and insanity. This one here from Dianat says that divorce is not valid for a person with schizophrenia, can't perceive their events, lives in their own dream world. How that marries up with modern psychological theory, though, is a gap. Online fatwa databases are even worse. So islamqa.org and islamqa.info. You can see the frustration of people that are asking these questions because it's just not grounded in anything legally classical, or in modern understandings of illness. And that's what makes this research project relevant to today's world. Um, we want to plug that gap. That's the intention, inshallah. The result of the literature review across these disciplines shows that there is a disconnect that seems to exist between classical Islamic law, Muslim physicians, as well as kind of modern law and modern psychology, and contemporary fatwa and classical fiqh. That leads us to the main research question of this research project, and that is, can the fiqh of mental illness contribute to directions in modern psychology? And conversely, can modern psychology contribute to fiqh of mental illness and fatwa? Now, to appropriately answer that question, we need some sub-questions first that need to be answered. And the first one is, how does Islamic law differentiate between junoon, insanity, and marad, illness? And is waswasa considered a form of marad, illness, or a form of junoon, insanity? And again, the relevance, inshallah, for the modern world is what practical outcomes exist for sufferers of OCD, specifically within the framework for these projects. For this project, sorry, is I've got three here. I've got primary framework, and I've got two secondary frameworks. So the philosophical framework that we'll be exploring is all about the theorizations and conceptualizations of the mind. What exactly is the mind? What exactly differentiates human beings from other creatures? And there's some, of course, Aristotle is a key figure in this, but also key Islamic logicians like Imam al-Abhari. In his very famous work, The Isagogy of Imam al-Abhari, talking about Porphyry's Isagogy, uh, designates the human being as the rational animal, or al-hayawan al-natiq, or al-hayawan al-mutakallim, the speaking animal. Sociologically, because illness is not considered a pathology in today's understanding of mental illnesses, um, it is understood to be a sociological or a legal construct. Insanity has nothing to do necessarily with mental health. It's all about how societies interact with people that they determine to be not aware of what they're doing. However, the primary framework is these legal maxims that I discussed at the beginning. So, certainty is not removed by doubt is one of these very big ones in understanding. I guess as a template for looking at certain illnesses. The Shafi'i Madhab's view of illness says that a person is exempt from any rites or rituals if their illness causes further illness, worsens their current illness, delays their recovery, or causes hardship and difficulty. And so, because of that, legal maxims are kind of derived as shorthand ways of looking at the law and providing dispensations for people. So, hardship begets eased. When a matter is narrowed, it becomes wider, and necessity renders the prohibited lawful. That's our broader, uh, that's the broader kind of theoretical framework for this project. The methodology or the feasibility of this study. So it's a qualitative study that will be conducting four types of analysis, and I'll discuss those in a minute, inshallah. So it's thematic analysis, latent thematic analysis, comparative analysis, and content analysis. Using the data, uh, data will be gleaned in Islamic law from the Hanafi, Maliki, and Shafi'i schools, and the works that I've got listed here are generally the relied upon works of the madhab. They're not rogue opinions within the madhab. They're opinions that are that form the hallmark of how the madhab understands these things. Classical Islamic medicine, we'll be looking at the works of Ibn Sina in his Qanun fi Tibb, Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, which we referred to earlier, and Abu Zakaria al-Razi in his book Kitab al-Mansuri. Sociologically, historically, so we discussed Michel Foucault and Andrew Scull's work and the works of Michael Dawes. Uh, Data will be taken from them on how insanity was understood historically and how it was understood specifically in classical Islamic societies. Other sources of law will be gleaned from contemporary fiqh databases or fatwa databases, and I've got them listed there, and online databases such as Islam QA or Islam QA.info. All of these sources will be used to assess Islamic law's approach to insanity and mental illness. So the analysis. So like I said, this project is a qualitative study and we'll be collecting data from primary and secondary sources and analyzing them according to these four methodologies. The first one is a thematic analysis. So that will be done on Quranic and Hadith literature. So what I will be doing is I will be going through all of the Quranic and all of the Hadith literature, looking for illness, marad, and insanity, junoon. And we'll codify them and we'll try and identify patterns and themes within this data. Um, um, Secondly, we'll be using a latent thematic analysis, and a latent thematic analysis is a bit deep, is a deeper analysis than just a mere thematic analysis. It looks more beyond words and utterances. It's the underlying ideas and assumptions and conceptualizations and ideologies of these words. And this will be done in the works of classical Islamic law. A comparative analysis will then be done between those classical works of fiqh, those classical works of law, and contemporary or modern fatwa from the sources that I listed above. And that's needed to gather in-depth insight into different cases and to capture the complexity, while at the same time trying to find something generalizable within the data. Uh, an example of that is modern fatwa relies more on cursory explanations of health literature, while classical fiqh makes no reference to it. A content analysis will finally be done on data collected from Islamic medicine, modern psychological theory, and sociological sources. This analysis is suitable because these sources already use prior research. So, for example, Islamic medicine uses Galenic or Hippocratic medicine. These are theories that are already existent, and so a content analysis will be suitable for that data. Again, talking about the kind of feasibility and the timeline, this is the proposed chapter outline that I've got. It's an introduction, and then talking about the Majnun versus the Marid, looking at it in Quranic and Hadith literature, the rational versus the irrational, law versus psychology, OCD and waswasa, and then finally a way through waswasa using fiqh and modern psychological treatments. Timeline, inshallah, if this goes well today, then the approval of candidature in November, and then from today, inshallah, till mid-24, we're hoping to complete the introduction, and then mid-24 to 25, chapter 1, and from mid-25 to 26, chapter 2, and 26 to 27, chapter 3 and 4, and then finally, in the last year of 2027, chapter 5, the conclusion, and then the final submission. In November 27, inshallah. Thank you very much. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you for your time today. These are a list of references that I've got. I can leave it up for longer if anyone needs to look at them a bit more closely, or I can also send them, whatever is more preferable, inshallah.
Thank you very much, upcoming Dr. Mustafa Al-Ghashangi. Let's give him a wonderful virtual round of applause. Wow, what a fantastic presentation. It really sets the scene this afternoon for Islamic psychology, and I really appreciated that theoretical and the literature review, and what a promising thesis. Now, we have, so because Mustafa is doing his proposal confirmation, I have Professor Hussein Rasul and Professor Bogus from, but unfortunately, Professor Bogus had to do the Jummah prayers. He's based in Indonesia, mashallah. So what I'm going to do, I'll get his comments when he comes back. Are you with us, Professor Bogus? If you're able to quickly provide us your feedback, you're able to go first, you can, but I think maybe the khutbah may have started and the fiqh will apply.
Yes, mashallah.
You must respect the fiqh. So
Yes.
let's if Professor Hussein, may I please request that you provide us with your review, with your feedback. Normally we have a discussion with the candidate at the end as well. We'll see if that's possible as well, inshallah. But if you're able to give us, for the benefit of our, for Mustafa and for all of us, thank you. Over to you, Professor Rasul.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, Mustafa. That was an excellent presentation. Alhamdulillah. You cover everything. Absolute everything. Anyway, a few questions, purely being constructive rather than making any comments on it. The one thing, did you manage to, first of all, why did you want to explore this particular topic? Is it because of the lack of literature of it? Do you have a special interest, or what really, what brought you to have a look at this particular theme?
Jazakumullah khair, Professor Rasul. You and Dr. Riono are luminaries in this field, so I feel really embarrassed presenting to you, actually. Jazakumullah khair. My interest is personal. I am a psychologist in my day job, and so I encounter a lot of this in my private practice.
Okay.
Where people kind of struggle to understand how to perform their acts of worship when they've got these illnesses. And OCD is one that's kind of comes through a lot. I also have a large amount of anecdotal data on how scholars or ulama, religious scholars, have dealt with people that struggle with this. But I struggled to find that within the literature. And so that's why I want to kind of dive a bit deeper and see what's said in classical works of fiqh, or even kind of within societies, to see how they approach these matters. So that's the
I mean,
interest
it makes sense. It makes sense, but I mean, your work is going to be immense value, because what's happening now is that we're making, all sort of fatwa based on, limited knowledge, really. Am I correct to say that?
Absolutely.
because there seemed to be, dissonance between, between the law, and medicine, really. Anyway, there's, I wonder why what surprised me, because this is new to me, what you presented, is that when you look at the knowledge ilm itself, anyway, in fact they used to be called it fiqh. Fiqh is the word knowledge, but not any bad. But it was very much interconnected. It was very much holistic,
Yeah.
and and there was no difference between because all these classical scholars were polymath anyway, theologian and so forth. Now I'm finding it really strange that there was never that connection between the relationship between medicine and the fiqh anyway and so forth anyway. Do you find that an anomaly there?
It seems to be, and I'm making kind of a broad generalization of the fiqh kind of
Sure.
literature here, that the way that the fuqaha, the way that scholars of fiqh, specifically Islamic law, dealt with questions like that is that refer it to your local, refer it to a trustworthy Muslim physician.
Okay.
And you'll find that a lot in some of the rules. I mean, even if you pick up like a classical work of fiqh, for instance, like Reliance of the Traveler, a very famous Shafi'i book. If you were to pick it up and there are some questions there of a medical nature, they'll say, but the fatwa of, or the position or the opinion of your trusted Muslim physician needs to be consulted. So in that way, the fiqh doesn't necessarily comment.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, it leaves it to the physician, it leaves it to the clinician. But then the thing is, the clinician, or at least from what I've seen, doesn't document what that is. There isn't some codified methodology of the Muslim physician. This is what we do when cases like this are presented to us, that exists within the body of fiqh, that exists within our understanding of medicine or psychology or etc.
Well, in addition, they have nothing to refer to.
That's right. That's absolutely correct. Subhanallah. That's absolutely correct.
Which means that everybody making their own particular
absolutely.
And
then it becomes very disjointed. Yeah, it becomes very disjointed. It's now not codified.
Which means that have a lot of implication. For example, we talk about divorce, about all these,
absolutely, absolutely, Professor Rasool. Absolutely.
Alhamdulillah. The other thing I'm interested, although you're looking at the four main Sunni school, did you, were you attracted not to look at, the Shia, because the Shia always sometimes presents some sort of alternative views. If you look at ethical problem like death, and near death experience, whatever it is anyway, abortion. There are many issues, many medical issues. There are big difference between the Shia,
absolutely.
Did you manage to come across any particular area where there's commonalities between the Sunni school and the Shia?
So to be honest, Professor Rasool, I didn't. And the reason why I didn't kind of explore Shia literature, I guess there's a couple of reasons. Firstly, I just wanted to focus on the madhab that I feel comfortable.
Sure. Yeah, I understand that. No,
but
just purely for my own interest. Purely for my own interest. It's because
only part, subhanAllah, interestingly, that I came across some wonderful Shia positions were in the work of Michael Doles, where he talks about the Majnun in classical Islamic society. He covers that incredibly. And when I kind of looked at his references or his sources for some of those positions within the Shia schools, I found them really hard to find. So in terms of using it for my research proposal, I wasn't able to incorporate it. But if there's latitude for me to use it within the actual project itself, inshallah, like why not? I'm not against that at all.
But because interesting, because we're interested to just not really explore it too much, but explore looking at because then sometimes there are some commonalities, sometimes they're not. But again, this is purely my own interest. I just like different alternatives, sort of things.
Yeah.
I mean, your methodology, very robust as well, looking at different qualitative study. I'm sure you are. I'm not saying that you have to use Makassi methodology there, from order. But have you thought about try to looking at some of the thing where you can incorporate it within your research itself anyway. For example, I'll give you an example. For example, you start with Nia, what your intention to doing, what the purpose of doing it, why you're doing it, again, you already explained why you're doing it and so on. So I think it's worth looking at, if you do come to literature, because that would help you to have a different mindset or different perspective on how we look at it. You're going to look at it from an Islamic point of view rather than from a, sort of,
no, that's very fair.
methodological point of view anyway.
That's very, very fair.
It's worth exploring. I'm not saying that, because the book is very easy to read anyway. It would give you, I'm sure you're going to, there will be some change in your own behavior in the sense of, maybe I need to look at it like that. Maybe I need to look at it. Maybe I look, maybe there's partialism. Maybe there are different bits and pieces where I could, apply some of these, some of the ideas that is generated from there. I mean, that will really make it very, very, very contemporary and very solid scholarship as well.
That's excellent feedback. Jazakumullah khair, Professor. Absolutely, you're right.
Yeah.
I will.
It's worth also looking at Myth of Mental Illness by Thomas Charles. Anyway, that's interesting for me. So,
Can you say that for me again?
The myth of mental illness. I think
the myth of mental illness. Yes.
The psychiatrist movement.
Yes.
Anyway.
Dr. Saz, Thomas Saz. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. But again, you can go on and on. But like Duffman, asylums, this is useful as well. Anyway, but
absolutely.
Again, you can just skim through it and pick up a few things from a sociological, psychosocial point of view.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to read the whole the whole thesis now. Anyway, you made me interested in it, and I like fiqh. But anyway, I enjoy fiqh anyway because I try to learn from the different madhab and make comparisons. But I'm glad you're using the qawaid of fiqhiyya, the maxim, and is it how maybe remove or something or something like that? Yeah.
There's some wonderful literature there, and I'm really hoping to hit it hard.
I don't know. I can't promise you, but I read a thesis from somebody from other university of Exeter in UK. It's from UK studies, and looking at the relationship between the maxim, the five maxims, Qawadi Fiqhiyya and medicine.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And if I don't promise you, but I don't know where it is, but if I do find it, I'll get your email. I'll send it to you, inshallah. I'll probably have a copy. Yeah, or I don't promise you, but I'll have a look anyway, because that will be useful as well, because we're just looking at the relationship between the maxim and so. Anyway, thank you very much. Have I overgone?
Not at all. No. If there's any other comments you have about methodology in terms of the timeline, I think I'm sure you're going to give us your written feedback as well, Professor Rasul. So
inshallah.
Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair. Now I'd like to open up the floor and allow our learned audience, which are our other professors, senior lecturers, all of you in the field, and PhD candidates. This is a chance for us to speak to Mustafa, speak to him about his methodology, anything that you have interest or comment. I'd like to open it up to all of you. Yes.
Can I just thank Mustafa first, please? Thank you, Mustafa, for answering my question. Great. Good to see you, and we hope to talk to you again, inshallah, in the future.
Inshallah. And a big thank you to, of course, my supervisors, Dr. Sulaiman and Professor Salih. They've been with me every step of the way. Jazakumullah khair.
You're welcome.
We'll stay with us because I think questions are coming up. Associate Professor Zaleha, over to you. Yes.
Thanks. Thank you, Mustafa. That was a very interesting presentation. I don't have the slides with me, so I'm trying to remember what I saw. I guess one thing, I guess your theoretical framework, maybe if you, two questions, if you can just give us a bit more clarity on why you chose the theoretical framework you did. But secondly, also, I noticed there's quite a number of components to your research. Like you've got the classical Islamic fiqh, I guess you've got the contemporary Islamic law, the sociology, Like that there's quite a few sort of
Yeah.
sections to it, which means I mean, obviously they're all interrelated. I guess more particularly thinking the sociological one, is that part critical? I guess the more components you have, the less in depth you'll be able to go into, because you've got a
Yeah.
limited word count. But then that word count is like 80,000 words. I get that. Yeah, can you comment on those 2 points?
That's very fair. So the first point that you made was regarding the theoretical framework. So I've got the slide up. Can you see that? Yeah. So exploring the sociological framework. So why did I include that there? I think because the understanding of illness has morphed dramatically as society has kind of advanced. And I say advanced kind of very cautiously. The way that we kind of refer to concepts is not, it's not abstract in the sense that it exists somewhere in some, obscure book of medicine. It's then how society interacts with that, right? So using the sociological constructs or as a framework is to kind of pull away this idea that rationality is something perhaps, and its opposite, insanity, is something perhaps ingrained or innate. It's not. It's the way that society morphs and changes to that. So post-Enlightenment Europe, for instance, is a really great example of how it's morphed, where othering became a huge weapon. These people are savages, these people are barbarians, these people are insane, these people are rational, these people are sophisticated. And the rise of like the insane asylum that Professor Rasul was just speaking about, and even schooling was all kind of born from looking at constructs this and then applying like a real world template over it, or a real world consequence as a result of it. So people are insane. Okay, well, it means they can't get married. People that have melancholia, are people that deserve to be in an asylum and, experimented on. And so that's why I think a sociological framework was important to explore. Does it present with a challenge in terms of word count? Yes, absolutely, because it is a rabbit hole, and there is lots and lots and lots of literature that kind of discusses the sociological approach to mental illness and insanity and human beings. Does that kind of answer that first question?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Okay. And your second question was regarding the methodology. Is that correct? So, minute.
What was my second question?
I think the point about, analyzing classical fiqh and modern fiqh.
Yeah, I guess they were linked because it was, I was saying there's so many focus areas. I guess, it's so, everything is, as it's like a rabbit hole, everything's so interrelated. But I suppose maybe you just, need to be conscious of how much you include of what, because at the end of the day, you're thinking, what is the fiqh of OCD?
Yes.
So I guess as long as your main part of your research is addressing that, those other elements that definitely have to be there, but they would be secondary. And you did say that it was
fair.
secondary.
Yeah, that's very fair.
But no, it's very good. Looking forward to this. PhD, much needed, clearly. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair for your feedback. That's very fair. I'll take it on board.
Thank you, Leha. Any other comments or questions for Mustafa? Anyone else? I had a very quick comment. So one thing that stood out to me, it's just a question, Mustafa, for you. As you were presenting the literature, particularly from Balkhi and Ibn Sina, and I wonder, you said, I think the obvious question you answered, Professor Rasul, about fiqh not sort of answering to the medical scholars of the time. But I wonder also if there's the schism between, like Ibn Sina at that time. I mean, this is just from the intellectual history. When you look at the context of these scholars, if they were not interested in promoting even his scientific. So I guess the question is that the scholars of the fiqh at that time that were looking at Sina, they're not receiving his medical canon, which was so influential. I don't know how they went past it, but I mean, there was that scholastic schism but as you know, there were some groups and the philosophers were a little bit, although I think many modern scholars have moved away from that and have actually looked at Sina and saying, actually, we can't just dismiss him here. But I mean, in that time, is that because of a faith issue that, Muslim scholars or in the fiqh, in the jurisprudence, they were kind of like, oh, well, we don't want to go into the falsafa, the philosophers. I mean, is that what would you say to that? Is that what you've seen or?
It's a wonderful question, mashallah, Dr. Mashid, and one that probably needs its own research. From what I can see, it was the use of classical Muslim physicians of Aristotelian philosophy.
Yeah.
And that garnered some very, very harsh criticism from the works of the theologians. So Imam Ghazali specifically was really rough on the works of Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd. But they're arguing against the philosophical, so more of those secondary stuff that Dr. Zulaykha was just speaking about earlier, rather than medicine stuff, rather than the relevant stuff. The average sufferer doesn't care about the theoretical kind of framework or the conceptual or the philosophy. The average sufferer just wants to know, how do I pray if I've got OCD, or how do I do wudu if I've got sensory processing disorder, and water kind of drives me a bit crazy. And I think that's where these things get lost. And then the real world consequence is that people are judged this or judged that, but then also don't have a template, don't have a way forward to worship God through.
Absolutely. It's very
so that schism is probably most obvious with Ibn Sina, but not so, and probably Al-Razi as well. Abu Zakaria Al-Razi, not Fakhruddin Razi.
Sure, more than Sina, I would say.
He got hammered. He got hammered. Sorry, it's horrible kind of unacademic language there. He really got pulled to task for some of his positions. Less so Abu Zayd al-Balkhi though.
Yes.
Which is interesting, which kind of I wonder, like, if there's more to Abu Zayd al-Balkhi than we know. I wonder if there's kind of other literature out there. I wonder if perhaps there's some positions that he had that we're not aware of yet. Maybe this can be like a Professor Malik Badri moment where we can find something like this. Allahu Alam, we'll say.
Yeah, inshallah, very promising. Once again, thank you. So, any other comments? Professor Riano, if you're back and if you want to comment, the floor is yours, but I just assume that the khutbah might be a little bit longer in Jakarta or in Indonesia. Okay, so we might come back to Professor. Well, once again, everyone, let's please join me in giving a wonderful round of applause to Mustafa Al-Ghashangi. And I apologize, I didn't read your biographies. You are a psychologist practicing the area, which makes it all the more relevant. And we look forward to this wonderful research coming out. Now,
thank you very, very much.
Inshallah, thank you. And
good luck, Carol.
And Mustafa, I might, if you can stick around.
Yes, of course.
We might have a little chat at the end. Ideally, normally we have a chat with your supervisors, myself, and the reviewers. So if we're able to facilitate that. Otherwise, I've taken some notes and we will definitely give you written feedback as well. Okay, so now I'm going to make Carol co-host, and Carol is also our PhD candidate. She's towards the end of her journey, which is fantastic. And I'd like to acknowledge I'm a part of the supervisory team of Carol's. I'm honored to be there, and also acknowledge Dr. Nada Ibrahim from Flinders University, and also Associate Professor Leha Keskian as well. All of us are in her supervisory team. And with all these Steve scholars, I'd like to just read, I know you have her abstract, so I won't do it, but Carol's presentation, let me just make it large, pin her, spotlight her. Okay, so Carol's presentation is on trauma of domestic violence and an Islamic perspective on healing, a case study of Australian Muslim women post-trauma growth. So that's a framework, very important topic. So over to you, Carol. Hopefully you're able to share your screen.
Yeah, I'll do it now. Thank you, Michelle. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll share it now. Are you able to see it?
I can see it now.
I'm just gonna. How's that?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm not going to present myself because Michelle did a wonderful job. I just like to acknowledge Michelle, Dr. Nada, Dr. Michelle, Dr. Zaleha, and Dr. Nada for being my supervisors and just for the support that they provided throughout this journey. I'd also like to acknowledge the participants for the amazing women that I interviewed for this research and for giving me the opportunity to conduct this study and, you know, supporting the study. Okay, so the aim of this research was to explore healing and recovery in Australian Muslim women who've had a lived experience of domestic violence. Domestic violence is a universal issue that knows no boundaries. It's a silent epidemic that affects individuals and communities worldwide, cutting through cultural, social, and religious fabrics. So the impact of domestic violence is significant, causing physical, psychological, and emotional harm to victims, and in some cases resulting in fatalities. So the recent data on prevalence and estimates of violence against women aged between 15 to 49, also conducted by the World Health Organization, showed that globally 26 to 28% of women who have been married or have had a partner have experienced domestic violence or have experienced some sort of domestic violence at least once in their life. So this research was about exploring post-traumatic growth in Australian Muslim women and the role of Islamic spirituality in the healing process. So why the interest in healing? Because women are stuck, they are not healing, they're not recovering, and when it comes to having, and they are not healing when it comes to having experienced domestic violence. So there has been a lot of focus on early intervention, prevention, and crisis intervention. However, often what is overlooked is their healing and their recovery process, which is necessary for women to move forward. So what this research is not. So this research is not clinical. It's not a clinical research. However, the focus is more of a theoretical framework that does have clinical implications. Okay, so the research question had an overarching main question of how Australian Muslim women survivors of domestic violence use Islamic spirituality principles in their healing. And also to further answer this question, a sub-question was part of it as well, in that it's to further understand in what ways principles relating to Islamic spirituality led to post-traumatic growth. Okay, so for the theoretical framework, two frameworks were utilized. The first framework is what is known as post-traumatic growth. So despite trauma leading to the negative events and consequences, there is often a concurrent perception of personal growth that accompanies these experiences. Trauma, although usually correlated with negative events and consequences, often can lead to a positive psychological change. So post-traumatic growth is characterized by a positive psychological transformation that individuals undergo due to enduring a significant trauma. This growth is usually perceived to be more profound and unlikely to have transpired without the trauma experience. The theory of post-traumatic growth is encapsulated across 5 primary domains. So in the first domain, post-traumatic growth involves developing a heightened appreciation for life and a shift in priorities. So acknowledging aspects that were previously perceived as insignificant or overlooked. The second domain is a reorientation towards a more intimate and meaningful relationships. This transformation often includes development of deeper connections, particularly in the wake of losing significant individual in one's life. The third domain of post-traumatic growth centers on self-actualization and the development of personal strength. This growth is characterized by an increased ability to handle challenging situations coupled with heightened awareness of one's vulnerability. In the fourth domain, post-traumatic growth involves the recognition and exploration of new possibilities. Individuals realize that there are alternative and novel pathways in life that can be pursued. So the final domain underlines spiritual growth, encompassing a deeper understanding of spiritual and existential questions and reflecting on profound spiritual and existential changes. So the area of spiritual growth has also been found to be one in which the most significant post-traumatic growth occurs. So the second theoretical framework for this study was looked at from the lens of an Islamic worldview. So from this worldview, it's a foundation upon which everything is built. The Islamic worldview is based on a comprehensive understanding that life and existence came to be because of the one and only creator. This worldview shapes a Muslim's understanding of the universe and relationship to it, providing an outlook in life. So why is Islamic spirituality important when discussing healing? So from an Islamic worldview, there is no spirituality without religious thoughts and practices. Therefore, it's imperative to understand Australian Muslim women and their healing journey from this worldview, as this provides insight into the ways they utilized Islamic spirituality and if it facilitated post-traumatic growth. So there was a notable gap in research that looked at post-traumatic growth and Islamic spirituality, even though spiritual growth is the main theory of post-traumatic growth is the domain that signifies the most change. So this study surpassed the existing limitations surrounding post-traumatic growth by analyzing it through the prism of an Islamic worldview and how this worldview can contribute and facilitate post-traumatic growth. So the model of post-traumatic growth is great to utilize, but it looks differently for Australian Muslim women and how it can be tailored towards this cohort. Okay, so for the methodology, to gain insight into the lived experience of Australian Muslim women, a qualitative method was utilized. So the data was collected by conducting semi-structured interviews. So the interviews were transcribed by using NVivo, which is a software tool that helps with data analysis. The analysis was conducted within the framework of Braun and Clark's reflexive thematic analysis. So the semi-structured interviews were thematically analyzed to examine the healing and growth of Australian Muslim women. This was done through a 6-step process, which is the diagram that's in this particular slide, using Braun and Clark's practical guide. Okay, so once the interviews had been transcribed and the analysis process conducted, the data that had been coded had to be narrowed down to a certain number of themes that were chosen. The themes that were identified represent a unique understanding of the participants' healing journeys according to their Muslim worldview. So these findings are presented under 5 major themes, which have been presented in the diagram, and these related directly to post-traumatic growth. So with each theme essentially scaffolding on the spiritual growth domain. So the themes that were identified include faith restoration, renewed connections, surviving to thriving, faith as a source of strength, and a renewed purpose in life. So underneath the 5 main themes that were identified were also sub-themes that were analyzed and presented from the transcribed interviews. These were identified throughout the reflexive thematic analysis process, in which the major themes had to be kind of broken up into sub-themes as the data was large. There's just too much data to present, so this was the best way to kind of present the data. The 5 main domains of the post-traumatic growth theory were the benchmarks that were used to analyze if post-traumatic growth and healing had been achieved with spiritual growth and deepening of faith identified as a key for healing and growth for Australian Muslim women. So the overall key findings that was unique across all themes and sub-themes was the utilization of Islamic spirituality and Islamic worldview in every theme and sub-theme that was identified. So, for example, within theme 1, there was initially there was a negative effect on spirituality and religiosity observed because of the lived experience of domestic violence. However, throughout the healing journey, participants described their spiritual journey and reconnection with Islamic spirituality as a driver of their growth and change. So within the main theory of post-traumatic growth, the main authors of this research state that, which is Calhoun and Tedeschi, state that pre-existing worldviews can allow a person to restore a balance to their cognition and spirituality, and this has been perceived as a way that supports coping with such trauma. This was apparent in the study findings as the participants had a pre-existing worldview, namely Islam, and through their means of using Islamic spirituality as a coping mechanism as well as a means of healing. Another key finding that was observed was how the participants utilized the key faculties within Islamic spirituality. So these are known as the human faculties, and they play a pivotal role in Islamic spirituality. Al-Ghazali has described this relationship between the four key human faculties, which are the heart, the spirit, the soul, and the intellect. They have been identified as important to healing from an Islamic worldview as they enable a human being to reach personal and spiritual growth. It was observed that although some women were not cognizant of the terminologies of these faculties, some did recognize it, or they described it even though they were not aware. Nevertheless, some women showed a real connection and post-traumatic growth via their description of the development of their human faculties, like their soul, ego, and heart. And the findings showed that most of the participants may have not had a level of awareness of engaging human faculties in their healing journey. About 50% of participants demonstrated engaging human faculties in their, demonstrated insight and Islamic knowledge pertaining to human nature, as well as the importance of these vessels in their healing journey. For the remaining participants, they had some understanding of knowledge of the human faculties. The participants who expressed knowledge or partial knowledge about the human faculties further described an overall holistic healing that was practiced by using Islamic spirituality principles, such as reliance on God, remembrance of God, Quranic recitation, prayer, and divine decree. So knowing and utilizing these operationalized concepts created a corresponding effect on the human faculties, whether they were aware of it or not. So what this shows is that participants having some sort of knowledge of the human faculties naturally allowed them to return to their natural disposition by rebuilding a relationship with God and healing the inner dimensions of themselves, utilizing these key principles and practices. So another key example that shows the link between post-traumatic growth theory and Islamic spirituality is theme 4, which is faith as a source of strength. So the post-traumatic growth domain of personal strength attributes change and growth in an individual's self-perception or an internal transformation. For the Australian Muslim women, this manifested for majority of the women interviewed as developing their identity and gaining personal strength through their faith. The women also demonstrated the importance of their Islamic worldview in guiding their personal strength and allowing them to heal. So they also discussed several practical and spiritual ways that they utilize their faith as a source of strength. They revealed how they use their faith to rebuild themselves, which then helped them to heal and move forward. But the most unique finding that was observed in the data was that in every identified theme, there was a central theme element that had emerged. This theme was that spirituality and religiosity played a constructive role in the healing process of Australian Muslim women. So these facets not only fostered spiritual growth, but also served as the catalyst, propelling healing and growth in all other domains amongst Australian Muslim women. So this was the most significant finding within the study, is just how much Islamic worldview and Islamic spirituality positively impacted the women in achieving post-traumatic growth and facilitating healing. Okay, so where to from here? So there were many implications from the study. I've kind of condensed them down to 3. So the first implication is knowledge. So the implications of these findings of this research include, knowledge pertaining to Australian Muslim women and their healing, and the theory related to Islamic spirituality and post-traumatic growth, with the emphasis on spiritual growth. Also, policy and practice considerations. So the research provides a deeper understanding of how Australian Muslim women view healing from their Islamic worldview. Findings of this research indicates that Muslim women utilize key concepts of Islamic spirituality to help facilitate and achieve post-traumatic growth, and also to heal. Since there is a lack of research on Muslim women and their healing journey, the themes identified within the data can inform literature on the tools and practices utilized that facilitate healing. The gap in research further stresses the need for more studies to address this important topic. More research can encourage interdisciplinary collaboration amongst researchers, mental health professionals, community leaders, and policymakers. So this collaboration can help create a comprehensive and holistic approach in supporting survivors of domestic violence in their healing process. Understanding the healing journey can also emphasizes the importance of fostering resilience and empowerment amongst survivors. This can be achieved through targeted programs that focus on empowerment, education, and mental health support. The research also shows the importance of the Islamic worldview to this cohort and its role in promoting post-traumatic growth. Most research that is available on post-traumatic growth has been within a generalized approach with a key focus on the various types of traumas within a variety of different cohorts. Research that has been conducted on Muslim women globally and from an Australian context has primarily focused on the implications of domestic violence, attitudes, beliefs relating to domestic violence and perpetration of domestic violence on Muslim women. So the findings of this study address the importance of healing, given the lack of data relating to this phase, and the importance of healing in recovery for reintegration into society. The research also offers important insights into the ability for this cohort to achieve post-traumatic growth by utilizing their Islamic worldview and Islamic spirituality to achieve this growth. Spirituality has also been seen as the core aspect in healing and infuses itself across all other domains, which gives us an insight into why healing looks different for Australian Muslim women. This in turn can help us provide tools and practices that are specifically tailored for Australian Muslim women. So the implications towards policy application are also important. The research findings can inform policy development and legal frameworks to better support survivors of domestic violence within the Australian Muslim community. It can advocate for changes that address the unique needs of this demographic. The outcomes can also be used to design community awareness campaign and educational initiatives. These efforts can challenge stereotypes, reduce stigma, and foster a better understanding of domestic violence and their healing journey. Policy applications need to be directed towards issues of recovery from domestic violence within the intervention stage of domestic violence, as this can support and offer a recovery space for women to heal. This targeted approach recognizes that intervention stage is not only just about immediate safety, but also about creating a conducive environment for healing and recovery. So by directing policy applications towards the recovery phase, it acknowledges the importance of providing women who've experienced domestic violence a space where they can heal holistically. This involves not only addressing the physical safety concerns, but also the emotional and psychological well-being of survivors. Policy initiatives can therefore prioritize the implementation of comprehensive support systems that go beyond immediate crisis intervention. So the themes that are identified in this research gives us an understanding of how Muslim women heal and achieve growth, which can therefore inform these action plans and practices for any service providers or organizations or clinicians that provide these intervention services to Muslim women. For the prevention policy aspect, there is a significant opportunity to channel efforts towards education as a key tool in preventing re-victimization. By leveraging the understanding gained from the lived experiences of domestic violence and healing, women can be empowered to actively engage in initiatives that promote healthy relationships. Education programs can also focus on providing resources, skills, and knowledge to help women build and maintain positive relationships. This proactive approach not only contributes to preventing further victimization, but also fosters a broader societal understanding of the dynamics of domestic violence and healing. Expanding and adapting existing services for Muslim women is another vital consideration within prevention policies, recognizing that the needs of survivors are diverse, dynamic. So policies should encourage the growth and enhancement of services. This can involve collaborating with community organizations, religious leaders, and mental health professionals to create a support system that is culturally sensitive and responsive to the unique challenges that are faced by Muslim women. Oh God, I forgot to change the slide, sorry. Okay, so the final implication is towards policy. The implication of this research can inform, practice that serves within the services that are provided towards these minority groups, such as Australian Muslim women. It showcases the importance of providing healing spaces and the impact and change this can have on their recovery phase. It also informs clinicians and practitioners that provide support services to Australian Muslim women, and also the importance of integrating Islamic spirituality practices and principles as tools for facilitating healing. Given the overwhelming findings regarding the importance of spirituality and religion in the lives of the participants, it's important for clinicians and practitioners to become comfortable with ways to incorporate Islamic spirituality when providing support within the healing phase. So an additional implication arising from this research that lies in the potential application of healing tools to address the diverse forms of trauma beyond domestic violence. So the practices and concepts identified in the healing journey of the Muslim women and within Islamic spirituality holds potential benefits for individuals who have undergone various types of other traumas. So this applicability extends beyond the specific focus on domestic violence, constituting a distinctive feature of this research. So while the findings are centered on Australian Muslim women, there is an opportunity for this research to have a broader impact, influencing and reshaping approaches to trauma and healing. Okay, so some of the key takeaway messages. So the central themes identified in this research concerning the fundamental principles and practices embodied within Islamic spirituality signal a profound avenue for Australian Muslim women to embark on a transformative process of healing conducive to post-traumatic growth. This unique form of healing not only fosters a profound appreciation for their own being, but extends to a newfound reverence to their lives, with the most noteworthy impact being on their spiritual development. The principles and practices woven into Islamic spirituality offer a transformative pathway, allowing individuals to reconnect with God and fortify their relationship with the divine. For Australian Muslim women, this reconnection served as a pivotal catalyst for post-traumatic growth, providing them with a heightened sense of purpose and meaning in the aftermath of their trauma. The healing process rooted in Islamic spirituality was identified to be a journey of self-discovery and spiritual elevation, ushering in a deeper understanding of themselves and their place within the broader realm of existence according to their Islamic worldview, which is parallel to the post-traumatic domains. So through the lens of Islamic principles and practices, the healing journey was identified to be a sacred one, wherein the restoration of spiritual well-being was intertwined with the broader concepts of post-traumatic growth. The nurturing and strengthening of one's connection with God offer a profound source of solace and resilience, contributing to a holistic recovery that extends beyond mere psychological healing. By delving into the lived experience of Australian Muslim women, it has shown that by drawing upon these principles and practices, they have not only navigated the complexities of post-traumatic experiences, but have also emerged with a newfound sense of resilience, purpose, and spiritual enrichment. That's it. Thank you. very much.
Thank you, Carol. Another fantastic,
Get through. Sorry,
fantastic presentation. Let's take this time to give her a virtual round of applause once again. So now I'd like to invite back all our wonderful guests this afternoon to provide their feedback and comments or questions to Carol. As you can see, we've started with 2 wonderful presentations today. Mustafa's done his proposal confirmation, and Carol's towards the end of her journey. So hopefully within this, there's a great, you know, observation learning for all our candidates and staff included in this research field. And yes, we have 2 questions. If I may just go to Professor Dr. Suleiman Sertkaya, and then I'll go to Samaya soon. Yes, Dr. Suleiman.
Thank you, Meshid. Thank you, Carol, for this wonderful presentation, and great to see this, you know, this research is done, much needed research, and it really, you know, the findings looks like it's going to contribute a lot for understanding and even influencing the policy making. So congratulations on that. I just like, it's out of curiosity, how did you select those individuals, participants? Like they may be Muslim, but may not be practicing at all. You know, it may not have any implications. So how did you select that sample, you know, participants? And another out of curiosity, if you make a very broad comparison to the experience of Muslims to non-Muslims, or to those Muslims who are not practicing, what would be your conclusion based on your research? And how common is this, you know, among Muslim society compared to the rest of the Australian community?
Thank you, Dr. Simon. It's great questions. So to answer your first one, the criteria was basically being, you know, a Muslim woman. So there was no criteria of practicing. And to gauge the practice was throughout the questions. So the interview questions were designed specifically to gauge their understanding of the Islamic worldview. And throughout the interview process, you could kind of gauge their level of practice. And throughout, I think I only had 20 participants, because as you can see, domestic violence is very hard to recruit. But from the cohort that we had, even though they weren't practicing, there was always a level of them returning to their faith, whether it was at the beginning, in the middle of their healing journey, or towards the end. There was always a return to faith somehow in their own. And a lot of them described losing their faith. That was a significant finding, but they always found their way back to their faith somehow in their own way, which was captured in the interviews. Okay, and the second, sorry, what was the second question?
Comparison of findings, you know, how do you compare this Muslims' experience to the rest of the Australian community?
Okay, surprisingly, you'll be surprised that there was a lot of research that was for non-Muslims in regards to post-traumatic growth, spirituality, and religiosity. And I mean that in a generic, like, you know, Christian, Jewish. So there is actually a lot of research that showcases spirituality and religiosity as key to healing and growth. The only thing that I couldn't find was research on the Muslim cohort. So that was the actual interesting thing about the literature review.
What are the significant differences, if you pinpoint anything?
Still,
what Jewish experience looks like as opposed to Muslim experience in that space?
Yeah, so a lot of I'm going to use a lot of the Christian background, Christian research, is that they all somehow, in their own worldview, had that connection to God. Obviously, our belief in God is different to how a Christian belief in God and a Jewish person, but there was always a return, a reconnection in their own way, whether it's the way they pray, the way that they worship God. So there was always that faith, you know, as a means of healing and growth in their own worldview, which is again similar to our unique findings, is, you know, the importance of spirituality and religiosity in any worldview. It's applicable to, you know, any worldview, which again is very unique.
Thank you. I think I was asking about how common is this among Muslim community. That's if there's a the domestic violence. Is it as common as the rest of the community, or is Muslims are in
it's
just
there's no boundaries. It's common against any religion, any background, any culture. It has no boundaries. So unfortunately, within our community, it's a little bit more silent, or there's a little bit more ways that they don't talk about it. I guess now it's a bit more. There's more. It's more's being done in this space, but there's a lot more research that needs to be done in.
Yeah, I asked that question because like people may have this misconception about Islam and how woman is treated, and it's much common in Muslims compared to the rest of the society. So that's why I was asking how common, So I would be surprised. I would not be surprised to see that it is actually less common in Muslim community compared to the rest of the thing. But
unfortunately, the reality is that it's common across all communities, but it's our understanding of it's the way we understand it, and the understanding of violence against women. And again, it's not.
I don't think there's data though, Carol, is there? Like domestic violence in Muslim community, percentage-wise, domestic violence in Australia.
It probably is, but I think
there is no data on that.
There probably would be, like the correlates between in our community specifically, or
like just the
comparison between other communities.
Because you know how you said there's you gave a percentage of women who experience domestic violence. That's in Australia.
Global. Yeah, that was a global percentage.
Oh, that was global. Yeah.
Organization. So that's globally. It just shows you the percentage of domestic violence, or having experience. I'm pretty sure there is that research that shows. But I haven't come across it. No.
Now he's got a hand up. But just a quick comment. I think Dr. Ibrahim, you're in this field. Do you have any stats for us?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Yeah.
I did hear an interesting sample research at the AIMS conference as well on this topic. But Dr. Ibrahim,
thank you for that. They actually see what happens is that when they collect data, say the personal safety survey every 4 years, I think we are overdue for the next one. What they do is, even though they do collect some of the data, they don't analyze it on that. So even the publication that I have on this space of documenting prevalences of DV within Muslim community is kind of like the only one that is there right now. So it is a bit old, but it's the only one that is there that talks about prevalences, and it's very, very similar to other communities in the Australian context. So unless somebody funds it for us to do a national study on it, we have to rely on what we already have, and really at the end of the day, one woman being killed every week or every day or whatever is too much. So at the end of the day, the prevalences are very similar, and I think it kind of like talks to this thing of how the Prophet, peace be upon him, he said that anything that exists in general community, you'll find it in the Muslim community. So whether it be domestic violence or child abuse or whatever, or mental health disorders or whatever, it is there. And so the thing is, it's about addressing it at the end of the day. So the prevalences that, and so it would be interesting to see the prevalences within Muslim majority countries to see how does that relate to the context over here. Because the reality is that it is such a private matter that a lot of times people won't say that, hey, I am being victimized or I'm the perpetrator or whatever for this thing about domestic violence, unfortunately.
Really good question. Over at the AIMS conference, Dr. Balawan-Jones presented an interesting upcoming research with Gina Graham from Muslim Women's Association that they did during COVID. And that was I recall distinctly that she said during that COVID period when they were sampling, there was an overrepresentation in their in their phone calls of Muslim women. But I guess that's a very specific and Muslim Women's Association, so it doesn't
I think it was a common thing for like during the COVID time. It was a common thing across every social demographic. It wasn't just particularly Muslim community, because if you look at a lot of the literature that came out for during COVID times, you do find there was a peak. So there was a lot of domestic violence that was happening, and it was understandable because of the confinement and alcohol and drug abuse and all the kind of issues that it was related to. So naturally there would have been a spike, and it's quite similar to, say, if you look at general communities and the data that's collected from telephone, people reaching out to it for 1800 respect or whatever, you'll always find that there's a spike during Easter break, and there's a spike during Christmas. So there's similar kind of patterns you will see are happening. And so it's unfortunate that these other stressors do create a spike in prevalences.
Interesting. And I think Sumaya had a question or a comment. So Sumaya, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, Rashid and everyone. Can I start by saying congratulations, mashallah, well done, Carol. What a breath of fresh air. And I'm so delighted to have received the link to this and joined at the perfect time. Carol, I have a comment, potentially just a reflection on a comment that Brother Suleiman made. So it's wonderful to see that research is emerging in this space. I am currently working in this space, so it's perfect timing for us, having established a new organisation to support individuals to heal and recover after divorce. So I think this topic in particular couldn't have come at a better time, subhanAllah. And what I found very interesting about your research and the key findings around the restoration of faith and this concept of renewed connections and leaning in on spirituality as a form of healing and coping was particularly of interest. I'll just give you a brief insight into why this is related to what we're doing. We launched our organisation with a survey to community, and we asked our community, the Australian Muslim community, to share their experience of healing and coping after divorce. So some of the questions, so it was a combination of qualitative and quantitative data that we're looking to capture. So some of the quantitative data was more around, your age, demographics, where you're from, and what the nature of the divorce was. Then when we looked at the qualitative questions, in which we specifically asked what the enablers of their healing and obstacles to their healing were, the strongest theme that came out was the spiritual, the reconnection with God, as finding their faith and engaging in more activity. So I find that is very much related. Our sample size, it's open to both men and women. Our sample size is still relatively small, but 84% of our respondents are women. And domestic violence came up as a theme as well as an obstacle to healing. I, subhanAllah, just wish I had met you at the time where you were still collecting data, because we currently have about 70 respondents and 84% of those are women. So some of those insights and data could have definitely leaned into your research. The only thing I regret now is not including a question specifically on domestic violence, how many people experienced it, because that would have been really good. Just a reflection on Brother Suleiman. You mentioned, you made a comment asking about some comparative studies between the Christian and Islamic experience of domestic violence and healing in general. What's interesting, Brother Suleiman, is what the Christian communities do really well is they develop healing programs specifically in the context of divorce. However, they incorporate the spiritual, the biblical studies as a way to heal and help participants and people who have experienced some level of abuse or trauma after divorce, specifically through their very detailed peer support group programs. And these have one specific program that comes to mind is called Divorce Care, that was established in the 1990s. So that's been developed. To 19 million people have been beneficiaries of this program around the world since its establishment. So in the Muslim community and space, this is under-researched. And I look forward to reading your work, Carol. Well done again. And I would love to stay connected and see how we might build on your learnings, inshallah, in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. I really appreciate it. Can we ask just what your organisation is called?
Yeah.
New Beginnings Australia. So we, New Beginnings Australia, we're on Facebook, Instagram. We do have a live community survey still open. We're trying to collect a sample size that's decent enough to build a good business case, inshallah, and for future research projects.
I'm so glad that it's so important that this colloquiums absolutely is for community, for academics, researchers to all come together, and for community to focus on where it's needed. So I can just see future collaborations happening, which is fantastic. Any other comments or questions for Carol or Mustafa, I know presented earlier? No, anything about methodology? Otherwise, well done. Once again, let's give Carol and Mustafa our appreciation. Oh, Dr. Nada. Yes, Dr. Nada, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I was going to ask Mustafa this question, like obviously it probably is not related to your thesis and your methodology and all that kind of stuff, where I see that it is very much, library research kind of oriented, where you're looking at fiqh and so on and so forth. I wanted to ask you, because when you're saying you come from you're a psychologist, say, I just wondered, any exam. I'm a person who really likes, as a researcher, who really likes to see whatever is being produced, that it transforms society in some way or the other, in a practical way, and that there is that infusion of real life experiences coming in, particularly with the rich background that you come from as a psychologist. I just wondered if any of that has a space to come into your research as being, here's what we see and here's the common patterns, particularly with the new age, what mental health looks like, or mental illnesses looks like in today's age, because there's so many different things that would not have been experienced during the classical scholars' times and so on and so forth. So I'm just wondering if there's any kind of reflections you have over that, because it's such a shame if none of that, makes its way into your thesis. I'm just wondering about your comments on that.
Oh, mashallah. There is, I guess, what I could broadly describe as, a great resurgence in Islamic psychology recently. And Dr. Bagas and Professor Rasul are pioneers in that. There's a lot of great work that's come out of Indonesia and Malaysia with regards to Islamic psychology. There is some excellent work that's also come from the United States and the UK. Cambridge Muslim College is one of them. The Khalil Center in Chicago, Dr. Rania Awad's excellent work. There is Dr. Abdullah Rothman. There is a collective push. What I perhaps struggle with some of these contemporary efforts is we largely then retreat into the theoretical. And we rarely talk about the practical. The only instance perhaps where I've seen recently where there is kind of like some sort of practical push was the OCD workbook for Islamic Waswasa that got released this year by the Khalil Center. So Dr. Fahad Khan, Human Kashfazi. I'm yet to come across any other kind of practical or material change for sufferers of mental illness. There are some unbelievable and wonderful new kind of directions in modern psychology as well. And if we can kind of incorporate that with our own traditions, just like Sister Carol was talking about, especially in the work of trauma, there is unbelievable change that can happen in our communities. So I'm not too sure if that's kind of answered your question or that's gone really broad. But from what I've seen, just as a general description, a lot of it seems to be largely individual. Khalil Center is a bit removed from Cambridge Muslim College, and it's removed from the work of the Indonesian scholars, and it's removed from the work of everybody. Kind of works in isolated pockets, and I don't think that's it's wonderful, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward their efforts and their intentions. But it just doesn't create societal change, I don't think.
I'm talking more about your work that you're
Oh,
doing.
mine. Oh gosh.
It's that, yeah, and your like it's kind of like your practitioner's hat that you have, and that it's the things that you are seeing, from
Yeah.
on a daily basis. Is that going to make its way at all into this work that you're going to be producing?
Oh, look, I'm not going to lie and say that the daily work that I do is a huge inspiration for me for this research. Can I incorporate my daily work somehow into the research without ethics approval or any of that? I think that presents some difficulties, but certainly, like I'm writing this for all the people that come and see me struggling with OCD and any other kind of illness that they're struggling with. So look, perhaps you'll kind of see the intentions and kind of my own work in between kind of the writing. But I don't think it'll be ethical for me to necessarily comment or present case studies if that's kind of what you mean. Perhaps that's another kind of bit of publication that I can do, but I don't think it can feature into this particular research project.
Yeah, because it would need obviously retrospective, consent and stuff like that. But
That's
I was kind of
correct.
like interested in knowing if there's going to be any element of, let's see how this, how people use this, the kind of knowledge that you're going to be producing, and who does it impact in what way,
Yeah.
particularly for today's life and, living in, context that is predominantly Western context, as a
Mhm.
minority and so on. So obviously, how does that have an impact? I was just kind of like, and that's why I said right at the beginning, a disclaimer that I know that this is not part of your research, but I just wondered on the thoughts on that,
Mm. I think it's the relationship is bi-directional. Because I take a lot of what I see at work and I bring that into the research somehow. And then I take a lot of what I get from the research and I kind of then try it at work. Sometimes it might be a bit foolish, sometimes it might be, not warranted, but sometimes when you're kind of looking at different kind of angles to work with people. So I'll give you an example. So, like, let's say OCD, for instance. I read a piece, that quote that I left there from the Maliki school, for instance. I've been using a lot at work. So I'll be saying, hey, look, listen, the lay people don't perform, need to reperform their wudu, but you're not a lay person, you don't reperform your wudu, you're a sufferer of this, and this is kind of a quote from the Maliki school, and so that's how that's kind of maybe the bi-direction that the research kind of impacts the practice, and the practice kind of bleeds into the research somehow.
Looks like a new emerging school here in Australia of the Muslim psychologists with the
Well, I mean, mashallah, ISRA CSU is kind of leading the way with the Islamic psychology degree, so like, why not? Let's not make this theoretical.
I think PhDs in particular, it's the research is paramount. It's significant, and it's really hopeful for our community in this space.
Sure.
Any other comments and questions? Otherwise,
thank you, Dr. Nada, by the way. Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan. Well, thank you, everyone else. I may just ask Professor Riono if he's still there. Dr. Suleiman, you can stay back. Mustafa, please. But I just want to thank all of you. Congratulations to Mustafa and Carol, both of you, for this wonderful milestone. And we have Professor Begas. If you'd like to stay back and listen, I'd like to hear from Professor Begas, but we will have a conversation about Mustafa's proposal in a bit of a depth. So if you don't need to stay, that's okay also. But otherwise, yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Vegas. May God accept your prayers on Friday, Jummah, and inshallah, we'd love to hear from you now. So we have heard from everybody else.
Am I needed? Sorry to interrupt you. Welcome, Dr. Vegas. I hope you're well.
Thank you.
We don't have Professor Hussain at all, but that's okay. Yeah, I think it's, you need to go. Otherwise you can stay. It's up to you. It's all right. I may have to. Okay.
No
All right.
problem.
Maybe 5 minutes. Leha, if you can stay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Professor Riona, over to you, inshallah.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I actually I already written my
Yes.
review report. Yeah, I sent it to the committee. I just want to stress one thing in the methodology. Yeah, there's I think more appropriate methodology, especially for this kind of research, which integrate the Islamic studies and also psychology. Yeah, this methodology is introduced by Prof. Jasir Auda from Canada, and it is called the Maqasid methodology. Yeah, I think it's very important because your topic is very interesting, and I'm afraid if you are not go deeper into the Maqasid methodology, then you will be trapped in the different perspective of this issue from the sociology, from the psychology, and so forth. Because, for example, when you talk about the social construct and something like that, and the relativism of the culture and so forth, I think when this deals with mental illness, sometimes it is misguided, because for example, if you rely on the relativism of culture, then some culture will see Muslim as of OCD person because they pray 5 times a day, for example, yeah. And when we what do you call it, maintain our wudu, yeah. And every time when we have to wudu again, when people say that we have obsessive-compulsive disorder. So this relativism actually is not, I mean, it's kind of risky, yeah, when we try to understand the reality of the mental health, because actually in the Islamic perspective, if we learn from the Quran, if we learn, I mean, if we study the Quran deep enough, we will find this understanding and description of what is called, I mean, those who have a mentally healthy person, yeah. So you already mentioned about Marad and Junud, yeah. So Marad is related to, like Munafiq and so forth and so forth. So in Islamic perspective, in Quranic perspective, actually, those who are mentally healthy is the one who have this nafsul mutmainah. They have this peace in the heart. But this peace in the heart has a lot of details in it that we need to study. So if you can do that, it's going to be very great, because then you can relate to the law, relate to the cultural issue, and so forth and so forth. I think that's my main point here. And if you need this reference, I will ask Prof. Jasir to share his book, and inshallah, I can share it with you. So you can use it as reference. Thank you.
Jazakumullah khair,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Baggis. You've done some excellent work in Maqasid methodology as well. I've read your work, Sidi. So, inshallah, it's your work that I'll be needing as well. Not just Professor Howard's.
So
Yes.
can I just add, it sounds similar to what I mentioned, I think, but I feel like you can still mention that, but not make it part of your methodology or theoretical framework. So, because you could talk, that's my suggestion, you can talk about it, but does it really have to be part of the methodology and theoretical framework? Yeah.
Okay, so I guess this is a comment on methodology and
Yeah. That's good feedback from you both. Jazakumullah khair.
Any other last comments from you, Mustafa, for us this afternoon?
No, Jazakallah khair for your time. Thank you very, very much. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for the interest as well. It's always heartwarming. And like I said earlier, yani I am embarrassed that it's Professor Rasul and Dr. Bagas that are marking my work because yani we're nothing, mashallah, compared to the real kind of attack that they've made in this industry and the real dent that they've left.
Thank
But
you.
alhamdulillah, like I'm also glad that they're the ones marking it as well.
And I also thank Dr. Vegas for his time and really constructive feedback on Mustafa's presentation and his thesis, his project. This is really important. He's just at the beginning, so hearing what experts really thinks about this is great, great, and it's a blessing at this point in time. Thank you so much.
Mustafa, we may just have a quick discussion among ourselves, but
Sure.
we thank you so much and congratulations for the first milestone. I will
Thank
be in
you.
touch and through the faculty as well, inshallah, for the next steps. So Jazakallah khair and thank you so much. And I really liked your dedication, inshallah, the work that you do. And Carol is also helpful for the Ummah, including our brothers and sisters who are going through the most horrendous of times right now. May Allah be with the Ummah. Thank you, Mr.
Ameen, 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 ameen. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you, everybody.
Please feel free to contact me, Brother
I
Mustafa.
will. I will, definitely.
MashaAllah.
So,
Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Bagas.
And I'll pass
You're
on, inshallah. So thank you, Mustafa. Now we'll just have a conversation among. Thanks, Mustafa. Thank you so
No
much.
problem, inshallah. Should I just say leave the whole meeting?
Yeah, if you can.
Okay, no problem, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Bye. So thank you, Professor Riona. I know you've sent your written feedback, but I guess I just wanted to have a quick discussion with you all. From what I understood from Professor Hussein Rasul, he was quite positive overall. I haven't received his written report. Sulaiman, you may have. But if there's anything specific, Professor Riona, that's an important feedback about methodology, and I've noted, I'm sure you've sent your written feedback. So do you think that overall Mustafa's proposal is worthy of confirmation for PhD for candidature?
Yes, I think overall is good. It's just that I'm kind of if he can make it, more, more to refer to the Quran with this Maqasid methodology, I think it's going to be better. I mean, like, there's a lot of work in this field that is, it's kind of only halfway to it, because it just referred to the work of the previous scholars, and the previous scholars' work, usually they contradict each other. And when we ground it into the Quranic understanding of the understanding of the Quranic messages, then we can compile. We kind of can integrate those scholars, but and also we can find the defining line, the essence of those opinions. Okay, so that it's going to be deeper and more. Actually, it's more constructive when you can refer to that. And actually, I also supervised a study to understand, the istiqamah from the Quranic perspective, and it's amazing. Like, I just learned that when we really study the Quran deeply, then we can have this systematic and comprehensive understanding of the issue. So this is I think very important. Yeah.
Really good point. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Professor. So Zulay, you're on the same page about.
Yeah, I am. So how would we decide whether it's minor review or major review? I guess do you need to, it sounds like it's not, yeah.
It's not major from what Professor Riona has said I think you've sent your report. You don't think there's a major review, just minor review and methodology, your comments?
Yes, this is because methodology is for the step forward. Okay, like the proposal is great, the idea is great and the literature review is great, but just the step forward need to be more, stronger. Yeah, more, focus, more stronger also. So I say this minor review because from at this point it can be accepted, but then for the further step you need to be more careful and more, focused.
All right. Sounds like we're all on the same page. Yeah.
Well, thank you all to all of you, and Suleiman, that's great. Congratulations to you as well. And I guess you did send us your report, didn't you, Professor Riona, in your US
Yes, I sent it.
Did you send it to Mashid, or I haven't received?
Yeah, I sent it to the email to, I think, to the email. I know who was that? Mashid. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
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 Thank you so much. Okay, I'll pass it on, inshallah. Thank you so much. I just had some Outlook problems today. Well, thank you, everyone. Jazakallah khair, Professor Riona. Inshallah, we hope to keep in touch in some capacity and perhaps hear from your wonderful work, maybe in future colloquium, inshallah.
Inshallah. Very good to see you in virtually, Dr. Beges, and thank you so much for your
lovely
contribution.
to see you again. Inshallah, see you face to face one day.
Yeah, I hope I can visit Sydney again, so can meet you.
Yes, Sydney and Melbourne. Mashid's in
Melbourne.
Sydney.
Okay.
Suleiman and I in Melbourne, so you're welcome to both cities.
Oh, okay. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Yeah, we're most welcome. We'd love to have you here in Australia, inshallah, one day. Okay, thank you, everyone. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.